Welcome to Out of Nowhere, where we talk with marketers, makers, and value creators about where they've been and where they're going next. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, this is Justin Watkins of Native Digital. Today we're talking with Cam from Pattern Ag. They're mapping the microbes in farmer soil to grow their bottom line.
For the better part of the last decade, I've been working on the leading technologies in the digital ag space, so ways to help digitize the farm and understand really what is happening on a farmer's field and how can we help that farmer make improved decisions or more informed decisions around what they're going to do either in season or for their next season, right? And all of that's really centered around how do we help farmers increase their productivity and profitability on their farm. So that's kind of the core challenge that I think many ag tech companies will be circling around, is how do I help ag in general and the farmer in particular to increase that productivity or profitability. And in my time at FieldView, what we learned, is one thing is that we were missing a key part of the equation, or what I think of as the farm equation. And that is to say, we understand a lot about the seed that we put in the ground, because the companies have invested deeply in understanding the genetic potential of that seed. And they understand a lot about the chemicals and other fertilizers they might put alongside that seed to help it grow. But we really knew nothing or very little about the actual soil environment that we were planting into. And it turns out that is just a huge driver of outcomes for the next season, really, is what is the fertility within that soil. So how much nutrients are going to be available for that plant? What is the environment from a pest and disease perspective? So which things are already in that field that may cause problems next season for you if you plant the wrong crop or if you don't protect them the right way. So there were all of these things we were seeing as we were trying to help farmers with these questions of what should I do next season to maximize my yield and my profitability, that we really couldn't answer because we didn't understand this core layer. So that was kind of the key insight from my days at FieldView. And then, with all of these things, it takes both an insight and new technical capabilities to approach a new problem in a different way. And I think the big insight or the big change technologically is our ability to understand what I'll say broadly, understand the biology of the world around us. And specifically, we do that through what's called genomics. So the ability to sequence DNA, RNA, other types of genetic material from the environment. And so you might be familiar with that. From a human perspective, there's a lot of stuff in the human health space of sequencing your own genome to help develop human therapeutics. We're applying some of those similar technologies to the ag space now. And in particular, what Pattern does is use genomics to analyze farm soil and understand what the opportunities and risks will be for the upcoming crop season. So helping farmers to really refine and dial in their fertility and their crop protection plans based on what we can learn from the biology of that soil, really understanding that environment deeply. And so that's the opportunity that we've gone after. And when I think about the bet we're making with Pattern, it is a bet fundamentally that understanding the biology of farming is going to be important to agriculture. And so that kind of seems like an intuitive and obvious thing. And it's not something that we really have today. It's kind of shocking when you think about it. We really don't understand those biological interactions very well. And so we hope to unlock that and really create some really unique value for the farmers that we work with.
Yeah, you mentioned that soil was sort of the bigger question mark, that you knew quite a bit about two other factors, but then soil was a question mark, and probably mostly because of access, right? That is an asset owned by farmers, right? And it's probably their most valuable asset, probably, right? They would count that as one of their most valuable assets. Whenever you started to put forward, started to talk about this, started to develop products and solutions around this, was it a receptive audience who said, oh yeah, this is one of our most valuable assets and we definitely need to learn more about it? Or was there some resistance, or was it, I'm busy with other things? Like, what was some of those first conversations like?
Yeah, for the folks who are, I'd say there's kind of 20 to 30% of the market who's really trying to push the boundaries of what they're doing from a farming perspective. for those types of folks, this was right in their wheelhouse, and they kind of instantly get it, right? Because they're trying to figure out, how do I boost my yield, that get to that next level? So go 10% more. How can I get there? And they're trying all kinds of different ways to do that, whether it's applying different inputs and whatnot. And they, of course, deeply understand that the soil is the foundation of their crop and the potential for that crop. And the issue is they just haven't had any technology in the past that helps them look more deeply into that soil and what's actually going on there. To give you a bit of more context there, historically, farmers will run analysis on their soil, but they'll basically run a series of assays that give them 3 or 4 key data points telling them what levels of certain nutrients they have. So in particular, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And then they'll look at the pH of that soil typically. And using those four metrics, so it's kind of 4 data points about their soil. That's typically what they've used in the past to understand, what's going on in my field and what should I do differently. And they intuitively understand that farm equation is a biological equation between that plant, the soil environment, and all of the microbes and other organisms in there that are either helping or hurting that plant performance. They just haven't had the tools to unlock that insight. And so when we've gone to market and started talking to farmers about this, the light bulb goes off instantly for them. And they're in some cases, miles ahead of where we are, even incapable of helping them, what they like us to be able to do. And so that's, I think, the opportunity and really what we continue to pursue every day.
At this stage of the venture, do you feel like you're still sort of breaking into those early adopters and still you have a lot of progress to make, or are you starting to look at the mainstream and those who may be watching the early adopter farmers and seeing, okay, do they vouch for this or not? I'm probably going to wait until they fully endorse it and I feel very comfortable. I mean, where is your focus at right now?
Yeah, we're definitely past the kind of early adoption phase. We spent, a good 2 or 3 years iterating on the technology, iterating on the core customer experience. And we're really at this exciting time where we've hit a few really key pain points that our customers have and are able to really solve them uniquely well. So to give you a bit of an example, with one pest we're able to detect, it's called corn rootworm. If you're familiar with Midwest row crop agriculture, there's in the ballpark of 90 million corn acres planted every year, across the Midwest. So it's a pretty big crop. And rootworm is one of the most destructive pests of that crop. And in the past, there really hasn't been any way to predict, what sort of pressure you're going to face other than, hey, was it in the area last year, right? Our test can actually go into a field and detect down to a single egg of this particular insect and tell you based on that what sort of pressure you're going to face, how much yield you might lose if you plant into that field without the proper protection. So that's kind of one really painful and high spend category that farmers are protecting on today, where we can tell them, hey, you're definitely going to need protection on this field. Or the other side of that is, hey, this field is actually clean. You don't have anything to worry about. You have a lot of options now. You can plant other seeds that might not have inherent protection against this pest, and really open up your range of options. So that's really where farmers see value. We think of it as, we help them to spend where they need it. So make sure you're not going to get caught, unprotected in a particular instance from some pest or disease, but then save where you don't as well. So knowing that, hey, you don't actually need to be spending on this particular crop protection product for this field. And so that's an example really where there's this very concrete ROI for our customers. And I would say that's, really going beyond the early adopter and really becoming a conventional tool that a lot of folks are looking to adopt and use. And folks who are helping with those crop protection decisions have been looking for these tools for years. And so very excited to be able to, when they find that we've got this capability.
Yeah, in terms of the timing, it sounds like this obviously is long term, this obviously pays off, right? What about short term? I mean, what kind of payback periods are you sort of setting expectations for when you're in these conversations? Is it immediate? Mm-hmm. Is it years? Is it months, years? What are you thinking?
We very much focus on having a in-year ROI. So you work with us, the first year you work with us, we expect to be able to create real value on the farm. And going back to this rootworm example, if they have a rootworm problem, that can be hundreds of dollars an acre in losses. And so across an operation can be thousands or even millions, depending on the size of the operation that they might lose. So helping them find where they're going to have potential losses is one way. The other side of that is, they may be spending $20, $30 an acre on protection that they don't need to be spending. And so our analysis, for $3 or $4 an acre can help them save that $30 or $40 they might be spending on other inputs, and gets that kind of instant kind of 10x return on that sort of analytical spend versus what they might spend on a crop protection product. So very much in season, first year, we're focused on, and then there's a lot of other longer term benefits that farmers can get.
Yeah, it sounds like you're hitting on both sides. It's in some cases we might be able to reduce the inputs because we're being a little bit more specific, but you also could potentially increase the outputs because we're going to prevent something that should be preventable, right? And so from year to year, there's an ROI, but I would assume that if you have healthier soil and those types of things, that has a bit of a compounding effect to it as well. Am I wrong on that, or would you say there's some compounding aspects?
That's definitely right. Yeah, the longer term opportunity and the bigger opportunity in some sense is, how do you help a farmer take their soil and that soil environment to the next level from a productivity potential perspective, right? So it may be that historically they've gotten 200 bushels to the acre of corn. How do you help them fundamentally improve that soil profile, the biological makeup, the chemical and physical makeup of that soil, such that the potential of that field is now 220, and that's a huge the value creation that gets unlocked there is tremendous. Again, because farming is they're operating on very low margins, and so if you can find another 5, 10, 20% in productivity on the top end, that could double, triple, quadruple their bottom line profit at the end of the year. And in the same vein, increase the value of that land. So again, you kind of hit on earlier that the soil, the land is really the core wealth that many farmers own. It's probably their biggest asset, and the thing that they want to leave as a legacy to future generations. And being able to improve and increase the value of that over time is obviously something that's top of mind for them, and it gets really exciting when we can help them to figure out what's the path to achieving higher and sustainably higher yields year in, year out.
The value prop sounds really clear. I'm curious what the original thrust on this was. Was it we have a team that's very passionate about helping farmers maximize sort of their potential, or was it more of we care more about sort of the environment in which we're working in, be a little bit and providing sustainable solutions because we can just be more specific and sharper about the way we do it? Like, what was kind of the original thrust for your team?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone on the team sits somewhere kind of on each of those spectrums of what gets them most excited. And I would say both of those are interesting to me in particular. I, having come from the ag space for the last decade, have a particular emphasis around, hey, we can solve some problems that will address environmental issues and sustainability issues, but we have to do that in a way that is aligned with farmer incentives and farmer economics as well. Because if you don't do that, you're never going to get the behavioral change over time that you want. And the perfect example that I use for this is kind of like Tesla. If we want to think about Tesla as it's an analog in some sense, Tesla didn't set out to build an EV and get people to buy that because it's right for the environment. They built an amazing car that people love to drive, and people, predominantly, I would say today, most people are probably buying that primarily because it's an awesome car and a great experience. And there's a little bit of, hey, and it's good for the environment. And that's a bit of how I think about what we're doing is like, hey, we want to build an awesome product experience for farmers that really helps them to dial in their crop protection and their fertility plans, and doing that more profitably and more efficiently. And the knock-on effect of that is that we're going to have a huge impact on the environment as well, in terms of reduced inputs, reduced impact on the environment as well. And so I think of that as, you have to kind of solve both sides of that equation. You can't kind of think of them independently necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way every sustainability product that's successful, for the most part, broadly successful, it is sort of like, oh yeah, and by the way, it's this, right? Because we are creatures that want to know, like, what's the benefit right now, and
Totally.
how does this pay off for what I'm trying to accomplish right now? And what I'm trying to accomplish right now is usually not these big, long-term, daunting
Mhm.
tasks. So I think that's probably where, you're able to say in 1 year we can get to ROI positive. And probably a little bit of loss aversion is a play here, right? Like you can prevent some losses that you are saying are preventable.
Completely. Yeah. And
Right.
that's a big reason folks are interested too, is that every year they're having to guess. So, as a farmer, you get about 30 or 40 shots at it, 30 or 40 years to make the right guess of what am I going to plant? How am I going to protect? And our technology now can remove a lot of that uncertainty and help them, effectively sleep well at night, knowing that, hey, I've got this risk, but I've got it covered, or hey, I don't have this problem and I'm not going to worry about it because I've made the right plans, I've made the right investments. So that's a huge part of it as well that folks are very excited about.
Now they just have to worry about the weather, right?
That's right. That's the one piece we can't control just yet. So
We can at least get the other variables under control and have more confidence to whether it's just one thing that we have
that's
less
right. And
influence
then,
on.
then you track the weather and you can say, hey, well, we knew we were at risk for this one thing, and the weather has broken in this particular way, such that this is now really a high risk thing for us. So let's go out and take the actions needed in the field to make sure we're protected.
If you were to meet maybe a handful of farmers and you were trying to evaluate which one is going to be most likely to be sort of to be most receptive to you, are there things about them or maybe other things that they've tried, other products that they're using or experimenting with where you'd say, oh yeah, that's our person, like that's a prime candidate for us? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the psychographic profile of the farmer who's interested in what we're doing is the one who's really open to new technologies and interested in increasing the efficiency and profitability of their operation. And so that's kind of generally from a very high level the types of folks that this really resonates with. Those types of folks will be experimenting with a wide range of ag technologies. So they may be applying new biological products in their field to see how that's going to give them a boost or benefit from yield. They might be using some of the newer hardware technologies, from a planting perspective or other tools they can use throughout the season to physically amend their field. So doing a lot of different things that the average farmer might not be necessarily thinking about yet. So it's definitely those folks who are looking for the next edge for their operation and figuring out how they can incorporate that into their overall operational plan.
Yeah, one of our clients is Pivot Bio, which creates nitrogen producing microbes, and I believe there's probably a lot of overlap, right? Like so we talk
Absolutely.
about early adopter farmers with them. I'm assuming that their audience, your audience, would probably have major overlap. Those two Venn diagrams would cross over quite a bit, I would assume.
That's definitely right. So we definitely see a lot of folks who are experimenting with Pivot, have incorporated Pivot as a big part of their operation, and those are the folks they're applying a biological to replace one of their core nutrients, nitrogen. They're deeply interested in how the biology is impacting that field, and really our analytics suite is the only suite available to really tell them and show them what's actually happening there. And unearth other insights, beyond nitrogen as well. So phosphorus, potassium, being two other big categories of spend on the fertility front. We can help them understand where they sit with that and what they could do differently there as well.
Yeah, it feels like there's this newly developing sort of stack of tools that should work together, right? So in some ways, you might have a new innovation, but it needs to be tracked. We need to have analytics on that. If we have new analytics, we now have the ability to try new things because we can see if it's going to pay off and work more specifically, correct? So like, it just seems like there's a lot of interesting activity in this space where
For sure.
there's just so many more tools than that were available probably
That's
what, five,
right.
ten
And
years
that
ago.
what you just described is kind of like, how I think about the technology evolution is that, one new capability unlocks the next one, right? And I definitely see what's happening in the biological space as right lockstep with what we're doing. And to give you some sense, we're working with certain biological companies to help understand, where is their biological actually going to perform really well. And so some biological products have a range of efficacy across different environments and soil types. And in some cases, they might get a really great boost of yield. In other cases, it might just be kind of a wash. And so, we can help them through our analysis say, hey, this is the sort of field where your biological, given the environment that you're planting into, that biological is going to work really well, and help to place those products where they're actually going to get the maximal ROI. And so that's kind of the one example of how we're helping to kind of marry the two worlds in some sense.
Yeah, that's great. When you were taking this message to market and introducing, what it is, the product that you're putting out, this platform, were there obstacles that you ran into, or was it smooth sailing? And people heard it, they loved it, they're like, oh, finally. Or did you run into some obstacles and have to kind of retool the way you're messaging about Pattern?
Yeah, I mean, I think starting anything new, brings a wide range of obstacles over a long time frame. When we started out, we certainly did not have as formed a view as to which particular analytics we could help with most. So I think that was kind of step one, is like, hey, really, where's the big value? And that helped to inform where we focused our efforts. So things like corn rootworm, soybean cyst, nematode. These are some of the really big issues that farmers were grappling with that they didn't have great tools to deal with. So that helped kind of drive us in a certain direction. And that forced certain technology changes and technology decisions to be made as well. So there's been an iterative process of working with our customers, understanding how they're thinking about the problems and how we're able to actually address them, and then retooling the technologies to address those really, really well. We've kind of been through that iterative process over the last couple of years. And I would say there's no shortage of challenges. It's kind of the nature of the beast. But we're pretty excited about where we've come out to now. I kind of just now feel like the product we have for this fall, which is kind of, we think of our crop season starts in the fall, in fact, as you think about the next year. The product we have for this fall is really the product that I've been kind of dreaming of for years, of kind of bringing it all together to understand your full crop protection and fertility needs for the next season.
That's awesome. It sounds like you've been working hand in hand with farmers and customers to develop this. Have there been sort of stories or more kind of rewarding engagements where you're like, man, that's exactly why we're doing this?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the coolest stories are situations where farmers have been struggling with a field for years. And, these fields might be, 20-30% lower in yield productivity than their kind of neighboring fields that these farmers are working, and they can't understand what's going on or why they can't get this piece of ground to perform. And we come in the first year are able to identify exactly what the issue might be. And so in some instances, we've gone in and seen just that they've had two neighboring fields, and one of them has soybean cyst nematode off the charts. The other one's got basically no pressure. Very obvious, what's driving that yield difference between those two fields. We've seen that with other pathogens as well in the field. One field we worked with, they had been throwing fertility at it for years, thinking that it was a fertility problem. Maybe we would give it more nitrogen or more phosphorus or something like that. And we came in and saw that it was off the charts on one of the pathogens called Fusarium, which basically kind of kills the roots of your plant. So your plant really doesn't even get going. Before it gets going, it gets kind of killed by this fungi. And so once they understood what was actually happening there, then they could take the right measures to address that issue and start to turn those fields around. So those are kind of the really, really great validation of just seeing it, instantly. First season they run our analysis, they get an instant ROI. And for those types of farmers, they see that, and then they're now incorporating that into their annual plans. They're like, this is something we're going to do every year on every field, just because we know it makes so much sense to understand what we're up against. And so seeing that adoption, seeing them go from just trialing to making it part of the way they farm, that's the really exciting part for me.
So do they keep that secret to themselves, or do they tell their friends?
Usually they tell their friends. They're good friends. Farming is an interesting business in that you're always kind of in competition with your neighbor to rent the next piece of ground. So they're not they're not out telling everyone exactly what's happening on their land, particularly the land they rent, but farmers talk, and when they see something work, they like to share it. And conversely, if they see something doesn't work, they're pretty vocal about it as well. So,
Yeah.
that's an important part. We've just been very focused on creating value for the farmer and making sure we're doing right by them. And I think the benefits accrue from kind of being very farmer first in that way.
I imagine that's the same thing that motivates your team as well, as hearing these firsthand stories.
Totally. Yeah. Seeing the technology work in the field, have real ROI impact, and seeing how, eventually this is going to be something that we envision working on, every crop and every acre around the world. There's no reason that we think the technology that we're working on will really eventually be kind of this ubiquitous analytics capability set that almost every farmer in the world could benefit from.
If you think back to how you foresaw this going in your mind's eye when you first set out, are you surprised at where you're standing at today? Or have there been big changes, or is it strangely to plan?
It's, in some ways it is strangely to plan. But that's also because I think you can't get too fixated on exactly what the thing will be, but more, have the general North Star vision of where you're going. And for me, starting out, it was, hey, we believe that understanding the biology of farming, the biology of agriculture, that set of interactions and relationships between the soil, the plant, the microbes in that soil, fundamentally, it's a belief that understanding is going to be valuable and will unlock insights and capabilities we didn't have before, right? And so that belief, it remains kind of true, and that's kind of my broad thesis or bet on what we're doing here. And it seems kind of obvious, but that remains true. I think exactly what the product is, it's actually starting to shape up a lot closer to form. I had designs that I had created in the first year that we just we weren't able to execute on that for various reasons. That the technology wasn't quite ready yet. That we're now really ready to bring out commercially this fall. And so that's really exciting to see some of those pieces come together and come full circle. So
that's great. Cam, it's been great talking to you about this and hear a little bit about your story. It sounds like you're doing important work that a lot of people are starting to discover, and it sounds like many more will. So
we certainly hope so. We're looking to be on 1 million plus acres this season, which is a lot relative to where we've been, but is not that. It's a drop in the pan when you think there's 200 million crop acres across the Midwest. So we've got lots of ground to go still before we've really achieved our vision, but we're well on the way.